Good morning, everybody. Well, good evening, really. We're going to get started in about 5 minutes. People are starting to trickle in. 7 o'clock start. I guess it was more of a doors open at 6:30, 7 o'clock starts. But due to the weather and meetup being down, likely people are just straggling in right now, seeing a bunch of people coming in. So again, 7:05, we'll get things started. Cool. So, good evening, everybody. Glad to see everybody made it out here in the exorbitantly cold weather that we're having for February in Canada. So I guess I can't really complain too much about it. First of all, welcome back to Mozilla. This is our second event that we're having here. First event that we had back in January with the Mobile Application Developer Group. Great time then, and I'm sure we're going to have another great time today. As you see, a bit more of a technical setup that we generally have. Whiteboard here, because we're going to be doing some obviously drawing and stuff. And because you can't really see, if I'm drawing over here, you can't see at the back. We're going to have it all up on the screen, so you'll be able to see even if you're on that side of the room, which is going to be amazing. And for those of you viewing online, you guys can watch this afterwards as well online. And for those about 10 people right now watching live as well, they can see what's going on as well. So again, welcome. It's great to see everybody coming out. Great to see such a great reaction, I keep saying great, to this type of topic. It's been one that's been in my mind for pretty much before we had the Back to Basics account, Back to Basics events. You'll remember the first one we had was the HTML and CSS event a few months ago. This one here probably should have come first, but the other one was kind of a testing the waters to see the reaction that you guys would have. It was a great reaction. Obviously, we're doing a second one here. We're pulling it back even further and bringing it back to something that I think every developer and designer and UX person and UI person should all know, right? Wireframing, project planning, where do you start? How do you get into a project? What are the things that are tools, books, resources, websites that you go to get ideas and plan things out? It's always something that you're learning throughout your career. And we have two absolutely amazing presenters here coming down from BNotions, not that far from here. We have Michael and we have Paul, who we'll introduce in just a moment. They'll be up here talking to you and presenting back and forth. I think you guys are competing, seeing who's better, who's worse. Yeah? Also, we have a giveaway this afternoon or this evening. We have, hold it up here, just to grab it's on the back. So what it is for everybody in the room here, it's actually a set of a bunch of gray markers, which I've got a similar set at home, as well as mechanical pencil. This is perfect for wireframing by hand. I kid you not, it's one of those sets here. Throw it here. Well, maybe not throw it because it's a pencil, but yes. Essentially, it's a set of gray markers. There's two ends to it. I highly recommend, if you don't win this tonight, please go buy one of these. It will save your life. Clients love seeing stuff made with this. They're gray markers, they're gray to black. Copic makes a version of this as well. These ones here are from, I believe, Desserts down the street as well. So one lucky person will get this tonight. Go buy a pair or go buy a box if you hope you don't have it. That being said, mechanical pencil, if you see mechanical pencil. Thank you. That being said, we've got a couple sponsors I just want to give a shout out to and thanks. First and foremost, we have Web War coming back to sponsor us this year. Absolutely amazing job that they're doing. They're holding an event this weekend. Does anybody know about the event that's happening this weekend? The Web for App? Yeah? No? A couple of hands in the thing. There's an event happening this weekend. If you have a mobile application, they're going to help you build an application. Come see me afterwards if you're interested in the event. It's free to attend, full day. It basically converts your application from web to mobile OS. Second thing, phone is going on mute. That was mine. But what I want to say was Digiflare is back as a sponsor as well. Digiflare is a premium house downtown Toronto that does development application work. They're always looking to hire. They're always looking for great talent. So if you look them up at Digiflare on Twitter, please go check them out. They've done some absolutely amazing applications in the past. And this is actually one of the things, Lanny Geffen was unfortunately not able to make it out tonight, but it's one of his passions I know for wireframing. It's one of the things that they've got a strong heart for, and I'm sure they'll be watching as well this evening and making fun of what these guys are putting out, because it's something that everybody should be doing. Anyway, enough rambling. I don't like having too much time up here, and I like to give as much time for the speakers as I can. Just a quick heads up for tonight. If you want to tweet, please use the event hashtag HTML5TO, like with all our events. We will be taking a break halfway through this evening, because I believe it's going to run for about an hour and a half. So about 8 o'clock, maybe quarter to 8, we'll be taking about a 10-minute break for anybody who wants to go to the washroom, go have a cigarette for those cancer people, and then they can come back and we'll continue on with a bit more practical hands-on demonstrations as well. Throughout the evening tonight, please help yourself. There's tons of food, beverages, juices. Just get up, get some, please. I do not want to take any of that stuff home. I've got enough equipment here as it is. I can't be carrying food. So please help yourselves dig in. With that, I'd like to invite Michael McArthur and Paul Crimi out. Thank you.
Hey everybody, how are you doing tonight?
No, Mike.
Uh-oh.
Nope, we're good.
Check 1, 2.
How's everyone tonight?
Good.
Thank you for coming out. We're really excited to do this and to see such a big group of people. It is a bit daunting. So, my name is Paul Crimi. I'm a product designer at a company called BNotions. We focus mostly on mobile apps, responsive web, those kinds of things there. Prior to that, I've made all kinds of really bad websites, but I've learned a lot from that, which is probably why I'm working at this company today and still employed. And this is my coworker, Michael.
Hey, I'm Michael McArthur. I'm also a product designer at BNotions. I've been there for about a year now. Previous to that, I've worked as an interaction designer, a front-end developer, an art director, a senior designer, pretty much you name it in the advertising industry, which I'm glad to be out of now. Yeah, I basically get to sit with this guy all day and just make really cool products, so I love it. And thank you for coming.
So we're going to talk a little bit about, well, I think mostly about wireframing. A little bit of theory up front, and we might bore you with that, but this is like, we like to treat this like a classroom type of thing, so if anyone has any questions or wants to challenge us on anything, we love that. Just throw your hand up or just shout out any questions. We don't mind at all. We'd rather this be a conversation rather than a lecture, because that's kind of boring.
With that said, I'd like to get a show of hands. Who here actually works in the tech industry currently? Okay, great. How many of you are currently designers or art directors or doing anything colorful and visual? Awesome. How many developers do we have in the room? And how many of you are back-end? Wow, okay, more than I thought. Any accounts people or project managers in the room? Whoa, well, all right, we have a full group. We should just make our own company.
Are there any UX people? Uh-oh. Oh. Okay, cool, very good. Okay, let's get going here. So.
Sure. So you want to create your own digital product. I guess that's why you're all here. Well, if you're going to do that, there's probably a few things you should know. The first part would basically be, what is information architecture? It's a bit of a high-level question, but if we move on to the next slide. Information architecture is basically the grouping of content so it can be presented in a logical order. Information architecture can be done in any number of ways. There are a number of tools. You can do it on a napkin at a bar or even on a piece of paper, or my favorite tool is actually a whiteboard. Moving forward, information architecture is basically the creation of clear and consistent navigation that allows the user to easily find the content they're looking for. What we really try to do is minimize the amounts of effort that a user has to go through to find the kind of things that they're trying to do, or the kind of actions they're trying to take, or the content that they're actually looking for. And by doing that, we have to employ a bunch of different methodologies, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, when you go to design your products, you're really taking you know, this ethereal kind of concept, or maybe you have a feature set, but really IA is the organization of that content so that it's consumable for your users. And I mean, everyone here really works in the industry, so you probably know all of this stuff already. So this is a refresher.
So again, clear and visible content hierarchy on each page or screen is absolutely key to this process. The number one UX rule, and I believe everybody can agree to this, is don't make me think.
So who's read the book? Yes.
Awesome.
Everyone who hasn't, please just go to Indigo Indigo. We've designed the Indigo app. Go to Indigo and purchase Don't Make Me Think. It is, I call it the UX Bible. It was written like in 2007, 2006. Someone correct me.
Still totally relevant.
It's at the 3rd edition now.
Yes.
I read the first one.
Have they updated the artwork in any of that? So, I mean, it might look kind of old, but all of the theory in there is really solid. It's a user-centric approach to design and all the considerations that one needs to take when approaching the design of anything, really. It applies to web and mobile and, I don't know, interior design, you name it. It's a really fascinating book.
So with that said, who's actually used a product that they absolutely hate? It can be an application, a mobile app, something that just makes it really difficult to use, totally unintuitive, uninspiring, kind of makes you want to like throw your phone in the toilet or out the window.
Should we throw
no
some of
number
those
of hands?
apps under the bus? Oh, that's not fair. That's not fair. Yep.
Go ahead.
Cool.
So when approaching information architecture, there's a few key things you should always ask yourself. Number one would be, what must users know first? So that would kind of inform the prioritization of content within an application, whether it's mobile or a web app or whatever it may be.
So think of someone like landing on any of the screen that you've designed, and like they're thinking to themselves, you know, where am I? What am I looking at? It provides the context for the frame or for the application. And so, you know, without that context, the user can feel lost, or they feel like they don't know how to navigate. And, you know, the first question, or, you know, if they have a question, they might be, well, I'm starting to think, what do I do? Maybe there's a competitor that I can click away to. So big consideration for that context, the very first thought.
Right. Many people in the industry believe that copy is king. I totally do not believe that. I believe that context is king in all situations, and context is the most important thing when designing an application. The second thing we must ask ourselves is, what actions do we want the user to take? I don't know, Paul, if you would like to take that a little bit further.
I mean, I have it in a few slides later in the deck, but I'll bring it up now. It's like, you know, what do you want your end game for your app to be, and or your website? And what do you want that end game to be for this specific piece of content or the specific page? And so, you know, if it's a contact form, it's very straightforward. I want someone to fill out that contact form. So, you know, how do I facilitate those needs? How do I make it like stupidly easy for that user to fill out that form and get in touch with me?
Which I guess leads us into our next question that we must ask ourselves, which is, how can we persuade the user to take those actions? There can be a number of things that we can do to do that. There might be an actual physical reward or something that they get from using an application. They might get likes or something from uploading a photo to Instagram. All sorts of things that can give them some kind of reward that may not actually be just the action that they end up taking.
There's a question.
I think that there's an assumption here that you know or have a goal for the user to adopt or accept and carry out.
Exactly.
Which makes this essentially promotional or is advertising in nature, as opposed to informational or instructional or other things.
Well, I mean, not necessarily. It could be, I mean, does Facebook as an example work against that? I mean, for Facebook, I just want to go and check out what's going on in my social network. It might not be, you know, promotional in a sense. Maybe on Facebook's side it is. I'll get some nice ads while I'm doing that.
No, it definitely is.
Yeah. But my need is to, you know, facilitate the understanding of what everybody's doing, or, you know, checking out, you know, the latest pictures or all of that. So from me being the end user standpoint, you know, that feed, I'll get into that as well, but that feed, the way that it's been designed to be endless scrolling, you know, I'm digging through content to find that one gem, and that one gem is the reward that I get. So I'll scroll forever until I hit a great piece of content, and I will keep doing that over and over again. It's causing repetitive behavior.
Or even adding that piece of content because you want to be the first one, and that is your reward, is that, hey, I was the first one here. I mean, we've all seen YouTube comments where somebody just writes first before, you know, a million other people start talking about Justin Bieber's music video or whatever it may be.
So like think Pinterest and Twitter, it's all the same model, that waterfall, that endless scroll.
So, move on.
Yep. So the action funnel. So again, I mean, this is to reiterate what we were saying. So it provides that context. So the very first thing is I say welcome, but you know, where am I and what can I do are the first 2 points. So that's supporting info. The questions on the right-hand side are the questions that I think the user might have, and then the funnel on the left is what the designer must provide. So, what am I looking at is addressing the welcome. What do you want me to do and how do I do it so that I can quickly decide to leave this page or take those actions. And then when the user takes an action, the question is, what happened and what can we do as designers to reinforce those actions that those users take.
And
So-
to iterate on that a little bit, we do consider an action to be an abstraction of any kind of user input. That could be a mouse click, it could be a tap, it could be a gesture, it could be uploading a photo, really anything that the user has to do.
Yeah, we try to abstract this out as much as possible for your purposes.
It really helps when you get into not only just like application maps and user flows and such, but being able to just create an action and not necessarily define what that action is often a thing that we use to really minimize the number of revisions we have to put into our documents. That's kind of outside of the topic for today, but we'll touch upon it lightly when we get into app maps.
So I mentioned this before, but every pixel on your screen or within the app that you're developing has to work to be there, I believe. Like, I don't like putting fluff in there for the sake of fluff. And design is not fluff if it's good design. It supports IA, it supports the usability and the experience of the application. So when I say all that, I just mean to really think about what you want that user to do with your app or whatever you're creating. So define that end game for the entire experience, and then define that end game for each screen that hopefully leads to that end game for the entire experience. And so, this is my favorite one. So the best interfaces are invisible. So I like to think of it, well, when I critique an interface, I think about it as, it's in the way of what I'm trying to do as a user. So as a designer, how can I minimize that impact? Try to design things as familiar as possible, obviously. Make things clear and easy and navigable. So, they get out of the way so that the user feels that they can achieve their goals or find the piece of content or upload their photo or whatever without any interruption.
So that brings us to app maps. Who here knows what an application map is? Who here knows what a site map is? All right, it's basically the same thing, so I wouldn't be too worried. Generally, app maps, and I'll draw some over here.
I want to preface this by saying that Michael is the app map king. Absolutely the best that I've ever seen. So no pressure.
All right.
Have fun.
I think we have an example on the next page, or maybe not yet. But basically, an app map is a high-level or bird's-eye overview of all the screens or pages that exist within an application. We've obviously all been to websites before where maybe at the bottom of the page in a large footer there's an entire site map. An app map's kind of more of a visual look at that kind of shows all the links top-down to basically what exists within the site. So if we have something, like we could say something like Facebook maybe, without getting into logins and everything, we start with a landing page, and then from that landing page I can get into maybe like my private messages. I can get into like maybe my photos and videos, and just all sorts of those sections. And then basically as the app map gets generated, different pages break down, and you can kind of see this kind of tree hierarchy for any application out there. And that's basically the starting point of anything that we do. We often, as we work for a company, we get client projects and we get requirements, and the first step really is to just take those requirements and figure out from a very high level what that might look like. From there we can actually start putting in features and figure out how things work, and obviously we start with a much larger app map than what we actually end up using in the end. I find that I generally remove 40 or 50% of my pages as I kind of consolidate content into other pages or screens within an application.
My advice would be to be wrong a lot and often, because you learn from that. And when you put what you're designing out in front of people, it'll get challenged by nature, and that's a good thing. People are afraid to be wrong, and I think that's BS when you're coming into like UX work, because there's going to be a lot of people using your app, and you need to get it in front of as many people and get as much feedback as possible, as quickly as possible, so that you can learn from you know, those hypotheses that you've made and iterate off of that.
Right. Sometimes Paul and I will work on something and just do it wrong on purpose a bunch of times, or just throw out the most ridiculous ideas.
Yeah, just to
for
test each
functions
other.
or whatever. Just, well, that, and just because we know we have to go through the process of being wrong before we can even be right. The chances of being right on your first time are probably 1 in a million, and we're never going to take that chance when it comes to clients and bosses and all of those great things. So up here on the screen, we have a more refined app map. This one's actually based on Instagram. I'm sure a lot of you are Instagram users. Show of hands if you are. Wow, wow, that's very small. Okay, well, perhaps it's not the best example then. But as you can see here, I wish I had a laser pointer or something, but in the top, can we flip the screens over? Just to show the on-screen a little larger. Perfect. So, excuse me, Paul. You can see over here, basically there's a page labeled 00. Every page in an app map has a number associated with it that we kind of use as a reference number for the entirety of the project. So once we get into wireframes, they'll carry those numbers through. As pages get removed, those numbers are kind of retired, almost like a hockey jersey or something. But you can see that basically this tells the story of the entire application, from the entry point or landing page through optional registration, maybe a login or forgot password down into a stream. It's perfect. Instagram actually allows you to view other users' profiles. You can see on the legend over here on the right that there's, you know, this is pretty simplistic compared to what we would normally do, but we have generic pages, duplicated pages, which actually exist in multiple places within an application. They might have slightly different functionality, so my profile might look slightly different from the other user's profile. Then we have conditional pages, such as, oh, that's perfect. Then we have these conditional pages over here, which we can see around the entry or registration. Obviously, if I'm logged in, then we don't need to have those pages within the system anymore. We really deal with that kind of logic when we get into flows. And every single page in an app map here actually contains its own flow that very much represents the exact functionality that exists in wireframes. Often Paul and I are working on a project. Sometimes he takes lead of flows, I'll take lead of wireframes, or vice versa. And as pages get created, the flows get updated to match exactly that. Usually around any kind of displays or button actions and that kind of thing. And as well as, like, obviously where certain links will go, or certain databases that get hit on and such. Again,
so sorry, Michael.
Much for this discussion.
Yes, I was going to ask you, we haven't touched upon that, and we're not going to do that tonight, but very quickly, what is a user flow?
User flow is basically the subset of one of these pages, and every single function, or all the logic, or all the actions that could possibly be taken within a specific page. It is basically the mapped out view of a wireframe. But again, we're just going to focus on wireframes for now. We might touch on this a couple more times as we move on. Anything that actually is just a different view from within a page, I wouldn't actually show as its own page. A modal, depending, like if we're doing like a desktop or web app, depending on where it lives, if we're just calling it in from somewhere else, it could very well be represented as its own page. But if it's more of just like a display, like maybe you get kicked out of a system and you need to re-log back in or something, then we would definitely see that login page be duplicated under that flow. You wouldn't actually see it here, though. You would see it within the flow of that specific page. Does that answer your question? Okay. And then beyond conditional pages, we also have non-physical pages. The projector is not really showing this here, but we generally leave these a little bit more grayed out, and non-physical pages are something like a logout function. So it might exist in a navigation, but it's not necessarily a page within the application, but it does actually have its own flow associated with it.
So you said it's like a what? What was the example you gave?
I'm sorry?
For logout page?
Yeah, so not physical or non-physical pages don't actually exist as a page within the application, but there might be a function that can be triggered that has its own flow associated with it. So yes, my example was the sign out or log out. In most mobile applications or websites, you just...
Sorry, I just haven't heard it.
No problem. And that's pretty much it. Sometimes we'll add little markers to the top corners to say, hey, this touches on like a mobile device or a tablet. Sometimes we showcase where social interactions may happen within an app map. So I can say, you know, on the stream, there's obviously a bunch of social interactions. I can like things, or maybe I can connect different social networks together, or whatever they may be. The legend's really malleable. We can really do anything with that we want to show the kind of information that we need.
So this, I'm guessing, is pretty simplistic. Real app, you have like many pages to these things?
Yes, definitely. I try to keep them all on one screen. They can get very big and very heavy. It really depends on what we're doing. This was one of the more simple examples I was trying to showcase for another class we were teaching, but unfortunately we don't have a whole lot of Instagram users in here today. Something like Vine would be very similar to this. Anyway.
Yeah, so let's go back a bit. So, you know, in our process, when we, you know, get our brief or whatever, the very first thing we'll do is essentially create one of these, whether it be on a whiteboard or, you know, done in Illustrator or whatever, because this starts to form those feature sets, and it gets to give us, it starts to give us like a high-level overview of, you know, what it is that we're actually going to start building. And so in order to start wireframing, we recommend that you guys you know, lay all of the content out in this style so that you can start to see all of the different pages you have to design, or maybe all of the different modules that would need to be in those wireframes, and, you know, how you can start to unify them across screens and, you know, reuse objects and whatnot. So for us, essentially, this is where we start.
A lot of it does come second nature. I mean, obviously, anything that requires an account will require a login screen or possibly a registration screen. But as I said, we often blow out the app maps into something incredibly big as we're trying to figure out where features actually manifest themselves within an application. And then from there, we kind of just pare down and remove pages as they get absorbed into other pages, or the functionality gets absorbed into other pages.
Good.
Yep. Well then, how do we go about planning a product? I guess we can move on to the next screen. Well, there's various UX methodologies out there. Not all of these are actually methodologies, but they're things or certain tasks we go through in order to find out more about the application or the requirements or the users, or why certain decisions have been made in the past on a specific product. All of these things are important to inform us. Obviously, if a certain design or interaction mechanism was created and used, there was probably some logic to that beforehand. So we really hold a series of deep dives with our clients or our users in order to just gain as much information as we can in order to make the most informed decisions that we can. A deep dive is really where we just sit down with a client in a room, maybe for 4 or 5 hours, and just talk about anything from analytics to past interaction designs to brand guidelines. Can we actually move the logo like this? Can we put things around it? Whatever those issues might be. We can get talking about social aspects of things. What kind of shares do they want to use, or what kind of
Yeah, so I mean, our deep dives are basically interviews, and they vary from client to client and project to project, but essentially what we need to do is fill our brains with enough information so that when we go to start wireframing, you know, we have the right fodder and we have the right knowledge, essentially, to act on behalf of the client as a designer. So, you know, it could be anything really. I don't know where to go from here on deep dives, but essentially, it's gathering that fodder from that client to get their perspective on what you should do. Now, that's not to say that, you know, that's the be-all, end-all. I have a diagram that I'll describe because it's not in this presentation, but it's a Venn diagram, and on one side is a business need, and so what we try to get from those deep dives are those business needs, you know, all the requirements and all of that knowledge. But on the other side of that Venn diagram is, you know, a user need. So what we do in UX design is we design for where those overlap. So wherever that user needs something from that business, that's where we play in that space. So we get to decide from the deep dives what exactly that area is.
Deep dives also allow us to ask any kinds of questions around business logic or business goals or business processes. When it came to something like Indigo, we had an entire conversation about like how their systems currently work, how their inventory works, how their sales systems work, and it's just to get that really deep understanding of everything we need to know in order to make those most informed decisions. I guess that brings us on to user empathy, if you'd like to take that.
Yeah, sure. I like to pretend, well, it's not far from true, but I like to pretend that I don't know anything about UX design. We make informed decisions when we go to wireframing and those kinds of decisions, but I can't claim to be the person that knows exactly what this user needs. So it's straightforward. We try to pretend that we're not who we are. We are that end user. So if I decide to design a button a certain way or have it in a certain placement, I'm not trying to dictate that's the solution. Rather, I'm trying to see what that end user would feel if that was placed in front of them that specific way.
And I guess...
And again, I mean, be wrong and be wrong often, because there is no, it's not a binary thing. It's not, this is right versus that's wrong. So put it out there, employ that empathy, and gauge the reaction is basically the kind of methodology that we use for that kind of thing.
Which leads me to an interesting point around where wireframing ends and interaction design begins. Some people and some companies believe that they should happen in the same place. The person who's in charge of the wireframes might actually be the interaction designer. They might not be an information architect. Sometimes design gets to actually figure out most of the interaction. It's something we like to think about regardless of what the situation we're in is. It could be anything from a mobile app that allows you to swipe one way to remove an item in a list, whereas the application may be catered to mothers who are shopping for baby products, and therefore they might have a stroller next to them, and they're not heavy application users, so just putting the button right there on the screen makes a lot more sense because it's just accessible. These are all things that we have to think through on a daily basis.
I'm going to skip the next one because the next slide's all about that.
Yeah, hooks.
And I kind of touched upon iteration. So again, don't
do it wrong.
Yeah, do it wrong. Don't design your pixels in stone. Kill your babies. All of those all of those phrases, apply here. So there's a book called Hooked, Influencing User Behavior. Is that right?
I believe so.
By Nir Eyal, I believe is the pronunciation. And so I'm going to very quickly talk about how to design for influencing users. So the acronym is ATARI. So A hook is ATARI. So A, T for trigger, A for action, R and I, R for reward, I for investment. So a trigger is like it's two types of triggers. It's an inherent need. So I might be hungry, so I will go to the store to buy some food. That's a trigger for me. Or it's something that someone tells me, so a call to action. So maybe a banner ad would be a trigger. So it's something that influences me to take some sort of action.
I should add, just because this isn't necessarily clear here, it does somewhat move like this. So you move from trigger to action to reward to investment. It didn't really come across in the slide.
Right. An action, so if you guys look up a scientist, behavioral scientist called B.J. Fogg out of Stanford University. He has his B.J. Fogg model, which it's pretty simple. It's basically, his theory is that if a user is highly motivated to take an action and that action is very easy to take, then they're probably going to take that action. There's a beautiful diagram for that. Again, should have put it into this. But do a quick Google search. He's done a lot of talks, a lot of videos. It's pretty cool to see him talk about what makes people do things. So a reward is, there's several types of rewards. An example would be, if you post something on Facebook and you get a whole bunch of likes, that feels good. You're given credit for posting that, for example. And that's going to cause that user to do that again. Another type of reward could be like what we were talking about before on Pinterest. Their model is to have an endless scrolling page, and what's found is that people will scroll and scroll and scroll through all of the garbage until they find that one golden piece of content that they might repost or repin rather. And people are willing to go through all of that content just to find that one piece, and that itself is the reward. And the last piece is an investment. And what an investment is an action that a user will take so that they know will benefit their experience in the future. So, for example, in a sports app, you might pick your favorite team during the onboarding process, knowing that the content that's going to be surfaced in that app is going to be all about that team. So you might take some extra time to fill out a survey beforehand, knowing that that will tailor the experience for you after. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, what influences people, check out Nir Eyal's book. He does a lot of online talks as well.
I believe there's a couple webinars that have been recorded up there you can watch as well, and I highly recommend it. They're extremely insightful. The next part of this is the iterative approach to planning. Again, do it wrong. The idea is really that you build something, you measure the success of it, you learn from the success of it, you kind of analyze, and you create hypothesis or assumptions about how the outcome came to be, and then you do it all over again, and you do it until things are absolutely perfect. And that could be 10 cycles, it could be 1,000 cycles, it may never actually end. I mean, a lot of us probably work on products that just keep going and going and going. I might work for an accounting firm, and I'm just stuck with this software for the next 20 years of my life as I'm developing it.
Michael does it in 2 cycles. No, that's not true.
Not at all.
Okay.
So, product planning. Step 1, outline the key features and or requirements of the application. If you're doing this for your own product, that could be a little bit more difficult because you really have to think about it. If you're getting a project from a client, well, that's pretty much what their requirement document tells you. Step 2 is researching the competitive analysis, the competitive landscape. Basically looking out there to find all similar products that exist that are somewhat related to the product that you're trying to make. If there are no competitive products out there, well, you're probably in a very good place to be creating something. But there's a lot of insight that you can learn from the way that other people have done things, especially when you start looking at multiple apps that are the same and you can find commonalities or rarities of feature sets. And there's a few ways that we do that. I don't actually have a spreadsheet here, but I can somewhat show you how we would go about this.
And this is great for learning about user interfaces and unique styles of gestures and whatnot if you're building a mobile app. But yeah, if you can take the best bits out of everything else and build on that. They say everything is a remix. This is true in this portion where you learn from what came before you. We stand on the shoulders of giants. Well, I got a lot of metaphors and phrases here. So, yeah, so you learn from that. You iterate and essentially make things better. And a remix, everything is a remix.
So when we're doing these feature comparisons, one thing we'll do is we'll just start a spreadsheet. We'll have whatever our app is here, our app, and then we'll just list other apps across the top of the spreadsheet. So app 1, app 2, app 3, and so on. And then we'll actually try to find, I guess, common names for various kinds of features. And we're not just talking about like login features or whatever, but actual like functional features that make an app what it is and what defines it as its own kind of thing, or whatever market it's actually trying to target. And then we'll list those features down the left-hand side of the spreadsheet. This isn't absolutely necessary, but we do find it extremely helpful. And then what we do is we basically just put a 1 in every cell where that feature takes place. So if our app has feature 1 and app number 2 has feature 1, we mark those there. Our app might also have feature 2, app 1 also has feature 2, and app 3 also has feature 2. And we can just fill out this list just kind of showing what hits on what. After that's done, we can basically tally or sum up the numbers across the cells. And on the right-hand side, we can see, well, only 2 apps have feature 1. 3 apps have feature 2. 1 app has feature 3. And 3 apps have feature 4. So we immediately see that feature 2 and feature 4 are common between all applications. And feature 3 is quite rare, so we know that we have something that nobody else is offering within our application. And that might be an interesting place to focus our efforts. It might not be. It might be a horrible feature. You just have to try it out and see what happens, right? Sorry, there was one other point to that last slide, which is establishing each product's brand essence. So all of these apps you know, they market themselves in one way or another. This one might say, hey, we're the best app ever. This one might say, you know, we're the best, let's say, like project management app, and this one is the best time tracking app or whatever. They might all cross over in various different ways, but they all kind of have that message. And it's also important to kind of recognize what that message is, because it can help you really define what your app is and how you can market it to other people. Anything to add? All right. Now step 3, well, that's basically our feature set comparison there. So we identified the common and rare features. Once that's done, we tend to outline what works and what doesn't. And we do that by highlighting the good, the bad, and the ugly. I unfortunately only have black and green markers here, but generally I would highlight the good in green, the bad maybe in yellow, and the ugly in red. And it's just a really easy way to quickly take a look at something and see what's happening and what you liked and what you didn't. Step 4, if there are competitor products out there, it's always a good idea to perform a heuristic analysis on any competitor in the market. Does anybody here know what a heuristic analysis is?
UX people, I'm looking at you, yes.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Heuristic analysis is basically looking at not only the design, the interactions, and everything within an application, but it's kind of a way to see how well those functions are working. And what we do is we basically make assumptions about what somebody did when they decided to make this feature the way that it is within a product. It might be the user assumed that people need to see X, Y, and Z, whatever it may be. But based on those assumptions, we then write observations on specific types of issues that may exist. It might be something like there's a carousel. Everybody's seen a carousel with a couple dots across the bottom, and you might have to count the number of dots to know how many slides there are within that carousel. A heuristic improvement would be adding numbers to those so you can immediately see, wait, I was on slide 3. That was the important, that was the slide I wanted to remember to go back to. From those observations, we write the implications. So the implication of the carousel example would be, I just don't know where I am. I've lost my spot. I actually have to physically count those dots to see where I was or where that piece of content was that I liked. Not the biggest fan of carousels, but it's just an example. Once you have the implications written down, you can then provide recommendations for it, so how to improve it. And the improvement would be actually writing those numbers on those specific dots. You should be really harsh when doing these things. You never really get a good holistic view of everything that should be done to an application to improve it, but you can identify all those little pieces all the way along the way that says, well, this is just horrible, or this is, you know, could be improved a little bit. We generally outline those by high priority, medium priority, low priority, and best practice. Those would be color-coded and such.
So better than learning from your own mistakes is learning from other people's mistakes, is the takeaway here.
Definitely.
So we kind of cover this stuff. So step 5 is to, you know, just get out from all the learnings that you have from the previous steps. You get out that initial thought of, you know, what is that application map? What are all of the sections that I'm designing for? And try to make sense of it all.
And that gets refined as the process goes on, as we've mentioned a couple of times. Start big, get smaller as you refine things. You figure out what the better way of doing things are. Step 6 is kind of interesting. That's mapping the features and the pages you outlined in the application map. So if, say, we had a login page, let's just draw a little page. I'm going to pretend it's mobile right now because it saves space, and it's kind of what I'm used to lately. Let's say we have a login page. Sorry for my horrible handwriting. We have a forgot password. And let's say we have a landing page of some sort, whatever the home page or whatever the user first lands on when they get into the application. Our feature set or our requirements might say, you know, the login page has to allow you to log in. So we can say we need, you know, a username, needs to have a password, and it needs to have some kind of call to action that. And it might actually need a link to forgot password. So the first thing we do is we basically just write this inside these various tiles, and we can immediately see, okay, these features have been taken care of. We should also think about any other page these features might need to exist on. The landing page well, this isn't a very good example, but the landing page might also have a feature that the other page had, and you just want to kind of write that down to see that it has been accounted for and that it will exist on those various pages. Once the functionality has been put into boxes and we figure out what functionality goes there or what functionality goes where, we can then take it to the next step where we actually start turning this into some kind of rudimentary wireframe. We will know that these are text fields, obviously, so I can basically just wipe those out and say, you know, the username actually has to just become something that looks like this, and as does the password. And then I know that forgot password and CTA still have to be there, so maybe forgot password becomes a little link underneath the password field.
So you might be thinking about labels in forms right now, and you know, what's best practice? Should they be inline? Should they be floating? Should they be you know, just above the field, to the left, to the right? These are difficult questions. A lot of usability tests have been made. A lot of people have different opinions on that. You know, for scanning, something like Michael has done is a good option. There's a new pattern that's out now. So I mean, the problem with inline, that I personally don't like inline labels. So inline is when, you know, the label is inside of that text field. When the user clicks into that and starts typing, the label goes away. And you know, people might stop and think, oh yeah, well, what was I writing? So they're breaking, as a UX designer, you're breaking the #1 rule, don't make me think. So, you know, as a designer, what are some of the ways that we can address those issues? So there's a new one that I like. I believe it's called the float label.
Oh, that's cool. I can draw that.
Yeah, do you want to sketch it out? So it's almost like an animating label. So it is inline, so it keeps your page nice.
There's a couple of different states that it actually has to exist in. So it'll be like a text field that has a label within it, but once you click into the text field, the label kind of pops up above it. You get your cursor, and then the label is displayed here or something like that.
So you get that little reminder of what it was that you were doing, but it keeps the page nice and tidy. So, I mean, I bring this up because there are a lot of, you know, best practices and whatnot, and you know, we're not really going to go into depth on what best practices are, because there's just so many different applications for these, and you know, it's almost like a case-by-case basis. But there are a lot of resources online, and we have a lot of links at the end of the presentation that, you know, address these concerns and questions that you should be asking yourself as a UX designer.
Basically what just happened here with me just writing the words in the boxes or the functions in the boxes and then turning it into some kind of actual visual elements, and then Paul pointing out that the interaction kind of sucks and could be better, and this is the way to go about it. Like, that's basically the iterative approach. You just keep erasing things and working on it until you feel like you have the best thing left in the end.
Never be satisfied. You know what? Throughout my career, I did a lot of complaining, and you know, this design sucks for this reason, and maybe we should try it this way. So you know, it's that curious mind that as UX designers, you should, you know, try to employ, because it's what takes, you know, the standard and makes it a little bit better each time. And the more you do that, the better and better you become as a designer, and you know, your products become, and you know, the industry as a whole gets better through that kind of evolutionary approach.
Right. So let's move on to the next step. Step 7, make sketchy love to your whiteboard. That's basically what you just saw us do. Again, once satisfied that all requirements and functions have been accounted for, take those words in the boxes and start iterating on your interface. And again, don't go too easy on yourself. Be very critical and know that you can keep doing something better until you're absolutely certain that there is nothing better that you could do. And then, you know, next year a new technology is going to come out. There's going to be some new kind of 3D transform or something that can make something work better, and then you just got to do it all over again. Step 8, this one's very important because it's really easy to just keep erasing stuff and going at it, but you always have to capture your work. I open up my phone and take photos about 20 times as I work through a session with Paul, just to make sure that I have every little iteration of what was on the whiteboard. You might end up erasing something that was the best implementation because you thought that there was something else that was better, and in the end it just wasn't true. So take pictures before you erase anything, and then erase everything, and then make improvements and repeat until you're satisfied. And then step 9 is massage your wires. This is when we finally get back to a computer again and start making somewhat of a deliverable. It doesn't just stop there. It's not that you just take your last version of the wire and then just make it look pretty in Illustrator or whatever it may be that you use. I'm a big fan of OmniGraffle, Fireworks, Illustrator, all those things. It doesn't really matter as long as it's really showcasing your design intent.
Balsamic.
Balsamic's a good one, but just turn this into a digital file. Hopefully it's vector, and hopefully you continue to iterate on it a little bit more after that. You can get into a little bit more detail. There is a wide range of fidelity that we're going to get into in a second that you could do your wires in, whether it's just like really sketchy or really refined, and they both have their pros and cons depending on who your audience is. Let's move over to the next slide here, because I believe that's when we get into it. So wireframes.
I mean, yeah, we've talked about this to death a little bit, but it's basically a representation of what you intend that interface to be. And so, you know, there's a whole process that happens up front that informs you on that UI. And this is just a way to express your thoughts or your ideas, you know, in a cohesive way. And like Michael was saying, there's all sorts of fidelities and you know, deliverables that we'll talk about, but it's basically so that you can learn from it or express it to someone else, or you know, present it to a client, just to get what's in here and out there.
So here's an example of Instagram wireframe. It looks pretty much like Instagram, but it's not colored or doesn't really contain a picture. As you can see, it's kind of just a high-level overview of what it would actually look like. The interactions may not be the same. I'm not sure if you guys can clearly see here. It's a little bit blurry for me, but in the top right, we have a refresh button. When Instagram actually was made, that manifested itself as a pull-down action. So wireframes aren't always necessarily representative of the final product, but all of the functions that exist within a wireframe should actually exist in the final product. They could just be abstracted or iterated upon or changed slightly. Again, this is just showing design and functionality intent, not necessarily the Bible that everybody has to pay attention to until the end of the product life cycle.
So this is one of our like higher fidelity wireframes, and like we were saying before, you know, by all means, if you want a wireframe on a napkin or whatever, as long as you know whatever your intent is with that wireframe, whether it's just to get an idea out or to present it to a client, you know, use the method that works best for you is our advice. Here, it's over here.
Don't worry about it.
So this is something that we would put in front of a client, and you know, there's a little bit more to it when we actually present them. What we'll do is we'll create like a PDF document with all of the different screens, and then annotations for every piece of functionality on that screen. And so, you know, with the annotations, we try to get very technical and functional. It's like tech writing. It's like this button takes the user here. Tapping on this does that. It's very specific. And so, I think I'm going to get into it in the next slide and why we do that. Yeah.
We already got through that.
Yeah, so who's it for? I was talking about this. So, you know, if you're working at an agency or whatever, you might have a client who is paying for you to do this. So, you know, this is the deliverable from the wireframe side. So, you know, it's going to go to them. They're going to tell you most of the time, hey, no, we want it this way. And so, you know, you go back and forth and have those conversations until you land upon that final version.
I don't think they'd really appreciate these kinds of sketches as final deliverables.
For us, what we do as well is they'll go straight to that first iteration. That'll go straight to our dev team. So, you know, for the devs in-house here, you might receive a set of wireframe documents, and as you know, some of the back-end functionality can start to get worked on, so that you know you're not lagging behind when you don't have to wait. You don't have to create like a waterfall type process in that scenario. So, you know, some of the UI might change in future versions of the wireframing document, but for our dev team anyway, you know, they want it as soon as possible. So, you know, they can create their scope and plan for, you know,
and
exactly
everything.
So for our users, for user testing, so, you know, like I said, you know, when I'm designing something, I know that it might change because I don't have all of the answers. So we take our wireframes and we put them in front of our users, and get feedback on that. So we've made our hypotheses on a user interface, and now we get feedback to iterate off of, or prove those hypotheses.
They're not always just looking at flat wireframes in a PDF or something. Also, we do use programs such as Envision prototyping, which actually allows us to put our wires into an application and see how it moves. So it's like having a tangible object in your hands, especially when it comes to mobile applications, that you can actually swipe through or start opening up navigations and really see how something actually feels if it were to be built. Of course, it's just moving images and turning states on and off and such, but it actually really is helpful.
Yeah, for me personally, again, I don't like putting flat wires in front of a user, because they don't have that context of how the application feels on a device. So Envision is a great one. Check out Envision app. I believe is their URL, envisionapp.com.
We have the link at the end of the presentation.
Oh yeah, and there's a slew of others that do the same thing, but you're basically linking JPEGs or PNGs together so that you can flow through those applications. Question? Yes, the question was, does Balsamiq do that sort of thing? Yes?
I believe it does. I have not used Balsamiq in probably about half a year now. I don't recall ever using the function.
I think you can.
It might be through like a clickable PDF or something. Right.
The people watching on YouTube can quickly Google this, and I might be corrected very quickly. But yeah, I think you can create hotspots and then link between those pages.
Nice.
You can.
So it's a clickable PDF. Right.
So the comment was that you can connect two different sets of wireframes and go back and forth. There's a plugin for that. So
nice.
That's pretty cool.
Especially for A/B testing. Yeah. And
the last one for yourself. So you might be a startup or an independent user that you have an idea that you want to get out in front of people, and so creating those wireframes to learn off of. If you're in that scenario, you can test and then iterate off of getting user feedback in that scenario.
So that brings us to fidelity, which we just touched on a little bit. There are certain implications of creating high fidelity and low fidelity wireframes. Sometimes it often happens that a client will see a very high fidelity wireframe and they think that that's actually what the end design is. I've actually heard clients say, well, where's the color? Are you actually just going to build this? So sometimes going lo-fi is actually the best way, because it allows the client to immediately know that this is a work in progress. And that's often something that we struggle with. At BNotions, we actually have a 5-level system of wireframes, where a level 1 would be very lo-fi, almost like a tissue session or something on a whiteboard, and hi-fi is basically like a designer could just paint it and we could try to put it out into production. We don't do that, but it's possible. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, it was anecdotal, so no.
And tools?
Tools of the trade. So kick it old school, pencil and paper. Just, again, to get your ideas out there. We all carry notebooks to every meeting. If we ever leave our desks, it's with us. So if you're getting into this, grab a notebook. There's several companies that make really good ones for, just look up UX notebooks. They have grids and whatnot for you.
UI stencils.
UI stencils, yes. Check that out, because they do a lot of good. They make actually plastic stencils, so that when you're drawing your interfaces, you can just trace it out. It's pretty cool.
There's all their notebooks and such that are also just made for responsive web design, where it shows you a desktop grid, a tablet grid, a mobile grid. I suggest just buying one and photocopying it a bunch of times, so you don't have to keep buying them because they're expensive. But doesn't touch on any of our sponsors, don't worry.
Also, you guys know Behance. It's a network for graphic designers and artists. The company behind them, so I believe it's behance.com, or again, Google it. They put out a set of notebooks that are really high quality for this type of thing. Pardon? Is it? Did they buy it?
Wow.
That's cool.
Again, my other tools, quick and dirties, whiteboards. I actually prefer whiteboards to notes, simply just because I can walk up there with my finger and erase something and redraw it on the spot. I don't like pencils, I like pens. It gets a little messy that way. And then you can step it up a notch to balsamic or omnigraphal and many more, as have been mentioned. Omnigraphal is a great tool if nobody here has used it. You can do anything with it. When I draw application maps and I draw lines between them, I can then drag boxes around and all the lines stay connected. People document circuitry in it. People design their gardens in it. There's a huge library of stencils out there that you can pretty much use for anything. But it's great for wireframing and prototyping.
And I like Balsamic for someone who's just getting into this thing, because they have across the top in their user interfaces a bunch of just modules that you can drag and drop onto the screen. And so anything that you have in mind that you want to create, they basically have all of the modules already for you. However, it's restricting in that sense that you have to use the modules that they have in the application. So if you're creating something that's brand new or way out there, it might not serve the purpose to get your thoughts on screen.
We personally use Illustrator just because we can do anything, and both coming from design backgrounds, obviously have a pretty good idea of how to use it. But especially for creating anything like icon sets and like really trying to provide those level 5 or high fidelity wireframes.
Oh, the other thing about Balsamic, which is pretty cool, is that you can toggle between like a sketchy view and like a higher fidelity view. So if you want to, you can create it and then switch between the two and present whatever you need to present depending on the situation.
Axure actually does that or it does that as well. Axure, if any of you know it, will actually put your app maps together for you as you create your wireframes. So it's kind of cool that way. Again, Hi-Fi, Illustrator, Fireworks, OmniGraphal, any other vector tool of your choice. Vectors, obviously just nice because it can be repurposed for any number of reasons on any number of screens and resolutions. And I think now's a good time to take our break. Anybody that wants to run to the washroom or go have a cigarette, feel free to do so. When we come back, we're going to have a little bit of a workshop and actually do some of this stuff for real and see how it pans out. So let's plan on being back, I guess, at a 10-minute break. 10. So 20 after 8, if that works for everyone. Thank you.
We're going to get
So-
started in 30 seconds? No?
Probably, yes. Actually, we're going to get started right now. I'm going to stand right beside you here.
Sure thing.
We'll squeeze in here. Come on over. Hey, hey, hey. So before we get started for the after the break session, what I figured I'd do, just because I don't know how long we're going to run, I'm going to do the giveaway right now for the absolutely amazing little package of gray markers, the gray stencil markers here, as well as just a mechanical pencil, just a very great drafter's pen. And for the record, I'd like it said on camera, I've been saying this for years, I think that this is mankind's absolute greatest tool he has ever created, the pencil. It creates, it innovates, you can erase it, but it makes sure that ideas can be passed from one to the other. Greatest piece of technology ever made by mankind. Sorry, a little humble on my part. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a giveaway of these markers here. Do you have a question that you're going to ask the audience? Before you ask it, are we doing it over Twitter? Are we doing it over raising your hands? I think we'll do it over raise your hands, right? Yeah. Cool. So this is because you guys are here. You guys are awesome. You're showing up to these events. You get food. You get interaction levels. But you also get the chance to possibly get giveaways and whatnot. So question is, and this will be the first hand that goes up. Don't yell it out, because if you yell it out, the person with their hand up first will steal your answer. So put your hand up, and we'll call the first person to put their hand up.
So the question is, what is the #1 rule of UX design?
In the back.
Don't make me think. Well
Don't
done.
make me think. Congratulations. Come on up and, okay, come on up. Run.
Everybody was
Come
pretty
on.
quick to the draw, but he was definitely the quickest.
There was definitely a lot of hands going up. So basically, it's a set of 12 color markers. They're all grays for you here, and a pencil. I expect to see absolutely amazing wireframes coming from you. Come on in. Come on in and say hi to everybody.
And because you're the winner, you have to do this next time.
Yes. So you're up on March, April. It's last Thursday of April. You're going to be doing a wireframing talk, right? All right. With a ton of examples.
Yes.
Awesome. Congratulations. And who here is ready to get their wireframing on? Yeah? Awesome. So without further ado, I leave it to you guys. Enjoy and good luck.
All right. So I guess what we're going to do is we're going to crowdsource a problem. So we're going to ask everybody to, I guess, tell us one by one a problem that you've experienced today that you think can be solved with some sort of application, whether it's desktop or mobile-based or whatever it may be, and we'll just use that as the basis to get going, and we'll just kind of riff off that, define feature sets, make an app map, and make a couple of rudimentary wires, and see what we can get done in the next little while.
Just shout them out, no, one by one, not one by
Who
one.
has problems? Go ahead. Finding the what, sorry?
The Rogers
All right,
store.
so she's had a problem finding a Rogers store. And Google Maps wasn't doing it for you? Oh, okay.
Oh.
Interesting.
There's the
Interesting.
problem right there. Oh, we love Rogers. All right, okay. Next problem? Yes? Cheap parking, that's a good one. So the problem was cheap parking. Where do I find parking when I'm driving around in the city? That's a good one. Anyone else? That's cheap. That's cheap. Yes.
Same thing, where's street parking?
Just in general, where can I park? That's a really good one.
Park with friends.
Anyone else have any problems? Yes.
You got a bunch of people sharing vacation property, and you got to schedule who's going to be there when.
Okay.
Timeshare scheduling.
Vacation property
2 weeks,
scheduling.
who's going to be there.
So like booking, you can maybe log in, book a section of time, and
Yeah, see what else is there, who's taking what. Sure.
that's great. It actually sounds really nice.
Yep. There's
On
a
a
couple
day
great
like
ones
today.
here. Any more? I think the app might not help you with that one.
It might be a map to like mech to get some good warm gear.
Maybe that would have been helpful. I'm happy to hear that nobody had any transit issues with streetcars or anything, so I didn't want to do that one.
So yeah, what do we have here?
Okay, well, we have the 4. Rogers locations, cheap parking, street parking. Those can probably be combined into the same application. And time share scheduling. Let's just do a show of hands for whatever ones you guys want to vote on, and we can just riff with those. So,
number 1.
Who wants Rogers locations? You're not even going to answer, putting your hand up for your own one? Cheap parking and street parking. Wow, that might be the winner.
Yeah.
And timeshare scheduling. All right, so we're going to do street parking and cheap parking. This should be interesting.
Uh-oh.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so let's think about this scenario here. Who does the planning of the parking when they're sitting at home before they leave? Wow, 3, 4 people. What about when you're in your car nearing the location here? 3 or 4 people. So maybe both scenarios apply.
All right.
So we're going to need a desktop and a mobile, yes. Well, what are some other considerations that I'm obviously overlooking here that we need to just know about finding parking?
Motorcycles, cars.
Yes?
Oh.
Hours of parking, yes, when you can and can't park. That's a really good one. I hope Green P has an API for that.
I don't know.
You heard it here, we're going to keep our hat.
Yeah, no, go. Shout him out. Ah, yes, busy times, traffic times, sports events was the comment.
That's about cheap and not cheap, right?
Yeah.
If there's sports, it's expensive, or concerts.
Good one.
If there's EV charging or where the closest gas station after that is.
Nice.
That's really good too. So I don't know, Michael, this might need a map or something.
It probably will.
Yeah, okay.
Well, just
Ooh, available parking spots. Like at the mall or something like that, or an underground garage. That would be really helpful.
so availability.
I hope there's an API for that. We just turn to our dev team and be like, yo, you got to build some APIs.
Make us some touch points.
And they tell us no.
Do you guys think about like the danger of doing this while driving, or like trying to?
Well, we don't want to get tickets.
We're not
do we?
responsible for any
Yeah.
accidents or deaths.
Whether it's voice activated or something like that.
That's a very good point. The question was, what are the considerations about safety while driving? So should we do some voice-activated, maybe search inputs? That's a really good point. So maybe we should, have voice search. Another one?
Or just special needs parking? Like
very
handicap
good.
zone?
Yeah, special needs parking.
Accessibility. Yeah.
Prepay. I hope there's an API for that. Yes, another one. Okay, indoor versus outdoor.
My convertible roof is broken.
What do you think? Do we have enough to?
I feel like there's a lot here.
Running at a whiteboard.
Do you actually just want to pull up a text document so we can keep this live or something? No, that's the presentation. Well, we can come back to it after. And I'm going to take a picture before I get scolded again. All right, so when I immediately look at this, and while Paul's doing his thing over here, I can immediately see that we have two main contexts that we have to deal with. We have to deal with I'm looking at home and I'm looking in car. Everything else is kind of around features and displays, I believe. So we'll need to display hours. It might be nice to see vehicle type, like is it a motorcycle spot or is it a car spot? Busy times, sports, I need to work on my closed parentheses. EV or gas stations. What was the point about gas stations being nearby? Or is it more just about the parking? Okay.
Yeah, finding the closest
But it was more about like if there's EV spots available for charging at the place. Wow. Availability, so I guess that's spot availability. I saw something really cool. I was in Turkey in May last year, and at the airport in Istanbul, they had these little like rows of lights above every single parking spot with a camera on it. And as cars would pull in and park, the light would turn red. So as you were driving down the corridor, you could just immediately see if there was a green light that there was a parking spot there.
You don't need to go to Turkey for that.
No?
That's here.
Where do we have that?
Oakville Airport, I thought.
Oh, really? Oh,
Pearson has it, some of them, yeah, I think Yorkdale, but not that level.
interesting.
It has like how many spots available.
Yeah.
But this was like every single spot had a light above it, so as you drove by, you could, nice, that's excellent. You can probably tell I don't drive.
I wanted to announce that Michael just got his G1.
It's true. Last Tuesday.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm almost an adult. So availability, distractions, voice. So yes, in the in-car context, distractions might be an issue. We're also looking at wheelchair accessibility and in and outdoor. I'm just going to type these up here really quickly so we can. Sorry, you got them? So context, in car and at home. Then what?
Email me that picture.
Sure.
It might be faster to type it.
Yeah, probably. Hours, vehicle type, busy times, EV. Keeping up?
Yeah. Is EV electric vehicle?
Yeah, like chargers, like the one at the office.
Yeah.
Availability, distractions, wheelchair accessibility, and inner outdoor.
Seems like location needs to be up there somewhere.
Right. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, well, the assumption is that we'll geolocate you and then tell you how far to go and which way to turn.
All right, so let's go through this process.
So what comes next?
Well,
Actually, I'm asking you guys, what comes
that's a
next?
good question.
Anyone? Anyone? Yes.
Yes.
An app map. The next step is to take all of our features and plot them out into some sort of coherent map that we can start to ideate on.
So a lot of this, again, is just kind of second nature because we've been doing this so long, and some things were going to be very obvious and some things we're going to have to work through as a group. I think for the sake of this, let's just pretend that we don't have to deal with like any user registration or anything like that. You're just opening up an app and you're getting things surfaced to you. So
I'm a bit disappointed.
Really?
Well, I wanted to put in like motorcycle or van or a profile page with.
I guess we're going to need that if you have a well, no, you can just filter vehicle type.
Let's just scratch it.
So we'll have some kind of landing screen. It's likely going to be a map of some sort. We often, when we're creating app maps and trying to figure things out, we'll put features next to these boxes. I'm actually going to call this 0.0 as well, just for the sake of actually doing everything. So we'll have the two contexts, so at home and in car.
So the question becomes in this scenario, how does it change between at home and in car? So at home might be some pre-planning stages, so maybe it's integrated with Google Maps or something. You're trying to find an address, and it might show you a circle of 5 minutes walking distance or whatever. Maybe there's a toggle that says I'm willing to walk 10 minutes.
Right.
I don't know. Is that a good idea?
Maybe. I mean, at home, I guess I would know kind of where it is I'm going. Oops, there's my mic. I need to know somewhat where I'm going, so maybe I just drag the map to a certain area, or maybe I enter a postal code. That seems a little bit difficult for a user, so probably just like moving somewhere to your general vicinity and zooming in on where you're going to go is probably the best idea. That would probably all be handled within the landing screen of the application. Yep. So then everything else is pretty much displays. I feel like we should have some more pages in here.
So let's do that profile page.
Yeah? Okay. So we're going to add...
Optional registration.
Yeah, let's just redo all this. I didn't take a picture again. I know. So we'll have... Well, maybe... Do we want to just do it as a mobile app?
No.
No? Because app maps across multiple...
I don't like HTML5 mobile.
Or just respond like a
apps.
responsive...
A responsive website? Okay, fine.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, that way we can just use the same app map for everything. So we're going to assume that the first step would be some kind of onboarding experience, kind of telling you about what the entire app's about, the who, what, and the why.
We're
Or
gonna
sorry,
get
how,
into
what,
it.
and why.
We're going to get into a debate now.
Are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we do this a lot. So, you know, someone will throw an idea out there and we will scream and shout at each other for hours at a time until one of us reigns victorious. So my argument against having an onboarding is that, you know what, I just want to find out where I can park, not have to go through an onboarding process. I'm a first-time user. Show me where the parking spots are. Let me get to my destination.
All right, we won't do onboarding then.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
I think it should be an option. You can there's a quick way, and then there's the login web as well. So that I think that you want the benefits of the casual user, and also the person who, let's say they go to 5 places habitually, and they want to know where to park at those 5 places. And if you log in, have a profile, then it knows, are you going to this place you usually go to, or that place, or whatever.
Right.
Very good point.
So
I'll try
maybe
to
there's some kind of persistent reminder to log in that kind of tells you the benefits of doing that.
Ooh.
Whoa,
Why don't we
good.
upsell it to the client in our meeting with them?
Oh man, yeah, we can squeeze them.
Wow. Okay, well, let's just say landing again, because that's really what it is. Again, you got to do it wrong. So maybe off landing, there would maybe be some marketing messaging there that would push you to sign in or register. We might have something that kind of looks like this in that case. So let's say 0.1 is register. Sorry, I should be on this side. And say sign in is 0.2. And
so
then
the
off
reason,
sign in.
Sorry, the reason why I interjected when I did was because the way that Michael had drawn it out originally, that onboarding or the usage of the app was dependent on that onboarding or that sign in. So in this scenario where it comes off of the stem from that landing page, it's not dependent. So we try to show dependencies at this stage as well. So if you're designing a mobile app that has an onboarding process, that comes before anything, and then that home screen will stem off of that onboarding. Now, if you flip it around, obviously you enter the home screen first, and then you can get to that onboarding if you need it.
So I'm just kind of going through here, drawing everything that's kind of occurring to me off the top of my head. For those of you, we didn't really touch on the numbers so much, but main sections will always start with a 0.0 or 1.0, and then all subsets of various pages exist under there. Now, register and sign in are kind of like global functions that are going to be subsets of the landing or the home page. So you can kind of see that registration is 0.1, it lives under 0.0, the leading 0 is the main thing to pay attention to. Sign in 0.2, forgot password is a subset of sign in, so it's 0.2.1. And then off forgot password, well, maybe we have a confirmation page that says, yeah, well, okay, we see that you've now sent us a password request, so that would become 0.2.2.
I've got a new one.
What's
new
that?
feature. Well, after you've parked and you've gone to your meetup, the question becomes, where did I park?
Where did I park? How much time do I have left on the meter? Like, all of these things need to be displayed somehow.
Oh, wow, this got huge.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty big. So really, I mean, I think we can actually deal with both contexts together. Either I'm using my current location
What
or
if
I
we
just
check
move to
into a
Zoom.
parking spot and then it changes context?
Well, yes, that's a good idea. So maybe we have a checked in states off of the landing. If it's going to contain significantly adapted or different design, I would like to call it its own page. If it's simply just showing that you're checked in or something and the functionality is the same, I would leave it all within the landing page and just deal with those within the flows. But let's call the checked in state 1.0. You cool with that?
I like that.
All right. All right, so let's call this, I mean, there could be other things. We often add another kind of section to our wires that are, or sorry, our flow or app maps that are outside of what the actual structure is. And we usually leave those for notifications or pushes and that kind of stuff.
Oh, I need an alert to tell me my meter's about to expire.
Right, so that would just add, we'll just call it X.X for now because the numbers could change around, but pushes all happen in there. So maybe I'm checked in and I say I put 2 hours on the meter, hour and 45 minutes has gone by, I get a reminder through the device or whatever it is I'm viewing saying, hey, your time's about to expire, you might want to go throw some more money in the meter or whatever it may be.
We can check with like Google
maybe this is all integrated with like Green P and everything to the point where we can actually just automatically make payments through the application.
I think we should
stuff
try
too.
to sell this.
That would be kind of great.
We'll all split it evenly.
So yeah, from a high level, I hope everyone can see up there. This is basically what it's looking like. Landing page, registration, sign in, forgot password confirmation, and then a checked in state. So with that said, I'm going to take a picture.
Did we miss anything? Does anyone want to add anything to this?
Well, I think, do you want to start listing features right here? Like outside of what's here?
No.
No? Okay. Well, I'm going to take another picture then. Obviously, we're kind of just plowing through this because I know everybody wants to get home eventually. We could spend days, if not weeks, doing this to try to figure out what actually is the best thing. But for now, let's just focus on the checked-in state and the landing state. I'm pretty sure everybody's registered or signed in or sent a forgot password request.
I want to touch upon that just a second. Sometimes we'll force each other to stop and be like, okay, you know, we've got into a place where it makes sense, but let's come back in tomorrow and forget everything that we've done and see if we go down a different path, if that makes more sense, or if we can combine anything that we've thought of on the the second or third day. And to, again, it's taking that iterative approach and trying to reset what you have done. Yes?
Do you ever, before you get to an actual prototype or anything like that, sort of run this by somebody from off the street?
Sometimes, yeah, we'll do...
the question was, do we ever run this by anyone off the street? You mean someone on the, some outside person? Yeah.
User testing, whatever you want to
Mm-hmm.
call it.
Okay. Yeah, we will often host almost like learning sessions where we bring in members of the public. I remember one time we had that Ryerson class that came by the office when we were working through things on a pitch that I'm not going to name at the moment.
That was a funny scenario.
Yeah. But basically, like, what do we call those?
Focus groups.
Yeah, focus group, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, there's different ways to do it. You can obviously, like, we'll run all of our stuff by our strategy team or our accounts team. So our accounts team is there to fight for the client and represent the client essentially in all of our sessions. And so they'll give us a lot of feedback on what we're designing, and our strategy, again, they can push us in certain directions that we hadn't thought about. So we do those internal type of tests, and then we will do a focus group if it's required, where we get we didn't touch upon user personas. So with each project, a client will give us a persona, or we'll create those personas. So we'll actually go out and try to find those people, sit them down in a room, give them some beers, and just talk to them about what we've been working on, and feature sets and all of those things to help inform the decisions that we're trying to make right now.
Sometimes we get really lucky. We have a client called C-Spire in the southern states, and they actually have a large user group of like really passionate customers. And what they basically do is they give those customers early access to their applications and such, so they can actually run those as their own user testing groups. So that's great when that happens, because that's thousands of people that kind of get early access. They feel good about being a customer of that specific company, and they get to provide all the feedback they want. Even with the Indigo application that we made, they had a Facebook group that was just there for people to just give ideas, like how could Indigo be improved? And we could scrape that and just get a whole bunch of data or interesting ideas that people were thinking would be beneficial to the company or for the consumer. And yeah, any kind of information like that's great. But
okay, let's move on.
All right. So, I mean, I guess we can add some more features to this as well. Do you want to get into payments and everything? Oops, I'm blocking the whiteboard again. Not so much?
Let's just assume that the app will know when you've made a payment.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise,
and remind you to go pay again?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Otherwise, you know, we're going to go through payment processes and
minimum viable product, people. Okay, so I'm going to make 2 boxes here, one that kind of represents desktop and one that represents mobile. The desktop one isn't as long as it should be. Sorry, 1 second. Usually don't do this at the same time like so.
So let's.
I mean, we could do a mobile first approach.
I'm all for that.
Yeah? I mean, so you can extract or extrapolate it and do whatever we need to do. But essentially, we're going to deal with the 0.0 screen first, the landing screen of the application. So I guess we can immediately know that we might have some kind of header bar across the top that might have a nice fancy logo of what our application
What should this
will
be called? Someone shout out a name.
Yeah, we need a good name.
What was that one? Park it.
Park it.
Love it.
Done.
Check for the domain availability.
Just do it back there. So, I mean, Parker?
Park.it.
Oh, wow.
Not .io?
Parkio?
Oh, park.it, obviously. Yeah, that's great.
Paul is Italian.
There's a 30-second delay on the stream. Somebody go register that right now.
It's probably taken, unfortunately. So we obviously have sign-ins. On mobile, I mean, there are a couple conventions that we will use. Let's just, for the sake of the conversation, say that this is iOS because there are different design considerations to be made between iOS and Android.
I'm kind of curious, what's the split iOS, Android, Windows, BlackBerry? iOS, hands up. Good portion. Android, bigger portion. BlackBerry.
Why?
Oh, Windows.
Cool.
1. Okay.
Download an app called ThemeStream. All right, so if we're mostly Android, let's consider us to be making an Android app on this side then. So we'll obviously have our hamburger navigation over on the left-hand side to pull up anything we may need. There's not really a whole lot to this app. I'm going to add another section right now, which is going to be called Settings, just for fun. Oops. Just so there's something that could exist within that section, and let's call that 2.0. So now, usually I wouldn't do both of these wireframes at once. I would start with one and then work through the other. But let's start going through the feature sets and seeing what we have. So we need to be able to see, I guess, first and foremost, a big map. Let's say on mobile it takes up the first half of our interface. And we don't really need to figure out what's on that map yet, but we know it's going to exist. So let's just kind of block off that area. We can probably assume the same for desktop. And then everything else is kind of somewhat of a display. So we need to be able to show multiple locations. So let me grab my green pen. And let's just do the kind of uniform teardrop. You know, there's a parking place here. There's a parking place here. If it's over, or a parking lot.
Michael.
Yes?
Do we need some sort of input to say, I'm going to this address? Or
yeah,
a geolocation
we
button?
do.
Okay.
Well,
Am I getting ahead
on
of
mobile, we can assume that it's being geolocated. On, I mean, we should provide the option to each.
It's debate time. What if I'm not at the location where I need to park?
Well, then you can go find the location where you're going. And just move the map across with some kind of
what about
a
a street address or a postal code or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know where the location is and you're just trying to find it, then yes, we'll need that kind of input. So let's just erase a little bit of this map guy and kind of create maybe like a little action bar across the top. I know we said we usually just do the features first, so let's not get too much into design yet, but we'll need some kind of enter location somehow. And maybe there's just a current location. Well, it should do that automatically.
In the Tesla, you'd be able to use the desktop version.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we need to know hour availability. Maybe when I tap or click on any of these boxes, let's say I select this one, maybe I can get some kind of overlay that shows up to give me more information about this specific parking lot. The first thing we have here on our list is hours. So maybe this parking lot is open from 12 to 12 every day. The second thing we have is vehicle type. So maybe we can say that it can take cars and motorcycles or whatever it may be. We can maybe create some kind of...
Ooh, what if we did like a color thing where like red is kind of full and green is like it's pretty empty?
And what about digits for showing the price range?
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll need to create those kinds of filters and
Yeah.
sorting mechanisms. Busy times is going to be a difficult one. It's just going to have to be...
Well, let's assume there's an API for it.
Okay. You know, we might want to create... I'm actually going to just break this little module out a little bit just so we can see it larger. It might be a little bit easier than trying to cram everything in there. Exactly. So let's say it's open from 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. We can take, you know, this kind of car. That's a checkbox in case nobody can see that properly. And it takes a motorcycle. The general cost, maybe we have some kind of cost breakdown. So 1 hour equals $1. That would be really nice. 3 hours equals $2.50. Yeah, that's more like it, isn't it? And a full day is 10, just for the sake of the conversation. After that, we have availability. So that's going to be a big one. I would actually want to color code, as Paul said, and I only have black and green, unfortunately. But maybe green spots currently have available spots. Red lots currently have no spots. Orange or yellow might have, you know, they're kind of like filling up maybe. We can actually even put the number of open spots on top of that icon with the color or whatever. So we can say, you know, this one has 14 available spots. This one has maybe 24. We can add other kinds of interactions. Sorry, go ahead.
What about
Colorblind users?
colorblind users? The point.
Wow.
That's a really great question. Wow.
Yeah, that's a big.
So yeah, what if we did? Yeah. What if we did like shape or the scale of?
We're not
of an
dictating
object?
final design right here. We're just making wireframes.
Oh yeah, that's design's problem.
These are design things. Let's stick to like probably the wireframe fundamentals and how we're doing the wireframes and planning it out. What you guys probably end up doing with that.
Right.
Yes.
Sure. Yep.
Personally, I think that there have to be two options, because right now you're giving me a whole textbook to read about finding my parking spot, and all I want is I want the green dots around that I can suddenly turn the car into, because I'm driving my car, so I don't have time to read all these things. I'd have to pull over to read everything.
Right.
So my feeling is that it's really important, or the option to put all your information in first, and the kind of car
payment thresholds or whatever that might be. I'm willing to pay up to $10 today.
The kind of car you have, whatever, because
Yeah.
so that you just get those green dots flashing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just thought I would mention.
That's a very good point. That is definitely a better interaction. And now I want to erase most of this.
Yeah, which is exactly what that practices would be in going through and reiterating and testing it with people.
Exactly. Yeah.
The thing is, like, we can, so this might be good for an in-home, like a pre-departure type of scenario, but in your scenario, we might know that A, you're on a mobile device, and B, your geolocation is constantly changing because you're driving. So we can set up, that scenario. Like if that's the scenario, then we'll just, show very minimal display.
Or just take the best option based on the criteria that you've entered into your profile and just give you the route. Like, take a right onto Peter Street and then left onto King or whatever it may be, and just get you there automatically.
Or it might be a toggle, or easy versus hard. But yeah, I mean, we
can even show historical data on this day over the last 5 years. What was the chance that by 7 o'clock all these spots are going to be full? I mean, there's many data points that we could try to include in this.
Yeah, but I mean, to our earlier points, is like this is that process. It's like, we throw out some bad ideas and get feedback on that, and basically iterate until we get that to a final or closer to final stage.
Mm-hmm. And your example here is exactly how we work every day. I mean, we'll start drawing something, and then Paul will be looking at it. He'll be like, no, that's not right. We should do something like this, and we'll just erase it and keep going and going and going. I really wish that we had the time to do this to the fullest extent with everybody here today. Sorry, question.
Yes, exactly. So when we created that app map and give it to our dev team, they would know right away, oh, okay, these UX guys, what are they up to? We have to talk to some sort of backend that has that kind of information. Mm-hmm. So they would do the research that's required to facilitate those types of features, and then either come back to us and say, hey guys, it's not going to work. Or, okay, that was cool, let's keep going forward with it.
And right now that would definitely be a problem, because I don't believe GreenPea can monitor every single spot that they have across the city. Drones, yeah, definitely. We could just have an AR drone on every parking lot. That'd be great. So yeah, no, that's a very good point. So maybe then for the sake of the rest of this conversation, let's just assume that I have no user profile on this screen, and I'm just trying to get a global view of what actually exists out there. We can create another one afterwards if we wish, that actually shows a filled out profile and how information would be surfaced. I mean, there's many different ways that people might use the application, but that point is definitely valid and was a way better idea than what we were doing up here to begin with. How do you want to go about this? Just keep going through?
I mean, I think you guys get the point, really. I don't want to bore you to death here.
Right.
With fake scenarios.
So, but anything that's kind of like an on or off or a binary mechanism, like indoor versus outdoor, or does it have a car, or do spots exist, or do spots not exist? Is it wheelchair accessible or not? I would surface most of those with some kind of just iconography on this little pop-up or tooltip or overlay, just to kind of say what those are. They'll all have their own little icons in them to speak to the fact that those things exist.
And so I want to talk a little bit about user interface design. And so, we have a header area and then a search input and a map. And so the question is, is that the right layout? Are there any other variations of this that we should, try to flesh out to see, if that's a better idea? So what we will do in this scenario is, so we have all our feature sets out in this wireframe, and so we try to think of other ways to lay out the content. So going back to what I was talking about earlier about information architecture, not information. What's that? What is the most important thing on the screen? What actions do we want that user to take, and how can they take those actions? So is that search input, should it be at the very top? Well, maybe that might be the first thing that they interact with. Should we test a version of it with it down below the map? Maybe they want to, just take a look at the map and see what's close, and click through all of those teardrop points there. We're not really sure. I mean, I don't have an answer to that question. But the point is that we'll create variations of these interfaces once we have all of those feature sets out there.
While you're talking, I'm just kind of riffing here on your ideas to what I would surface if I just opened up an application and it automatically said, I know everything about you, I know what you want, here's the next place. So we can kind of maybe just say, there's a parking lot name. Maybe we give the address information, and then maybe we have sorry, this isn't very good there. Maybe there is a little map to just kind of say, hey, it exists here on this map. And then maybe we can start providing directional information. So I just say, take a right in, maybe 500 meters. And you can kind of see, I'm here, I need to take this route to get to this spot. And if I don't understand, or I might not like this spot for some reason, maybe I know it's in a bad part of town, I don't want to park my car there, whatever the reason may be, maybe I just have a big, skip or a next button at the bottom that'll find me my next best option based on what the information the application knows about me.
And so we were talking a little bit about competitor analysis. So automatically you start to think of other apps like Google Maps, and I don't know who else does mapping. But anyways, how do
Bing, yeah. Who uses Bing?
Bing, the Microsoft guy.
Oh yeah, nice. Okay.
So we'll look at those apps. So we have very similar problems. Like we might want to list out different options for parking. So Google Maps does different routes. So what is best practice for listing out these types of features? So we'll look at competitors or apps like that to help inform the decisions that we make.
Maybe there's even other features to get displayed too. Like maybe I can get a count of the number of reported break-ins in that parking lot over the last year or something, and just start surfacing all this information that may be more valuable to making this decision, or just tapping or swiping this next button or something to show me what my next option might be. It's always a risk, I guess, right? Yeah. Leaving your beauty somewhere.
So how would you deal with the idea of having a whole bunch of calculations done behind the scene, like calculating the thing about risk and the thing about location and the thing about available spaces and all that, to have it just show a green light or a red light or something? Would you deal with that at all?
I don't know if that's something that our position as product designers or information architects or interaction designers would actually have to deal with. We would need to know the limitations of the existing systems and be able to identify those, but we would largely leave that back or up to our back-end developers to actually inform stuff.
Specifying those kinds of things to the back-end guy?
With flows within pages, yeah. We can do like a series of decision boxes. Again, we're not really getting into that for the purpose of today's talk, but I can definitely start creating that kind of logic and say, has this parking lot had any break-ins? If no,
to display.
Well, display this or display this, symbol. Or it could just chain through a bunch of decisions. And once those various conditions are met, we could say display this or display this color or whatever that may be.
So you have a way of spelling that out.
Yeah, so
yeah,
if I'm understanding
really
some of the logic behind how to display what to display, is that right? So yeah, in those scenarios that it's handled by those user flow documents. So we know that these are all of the parameters that we need to check against, and if it meets specific criteria, then display X. If it meets a different set of criteria, display Y.
People could probably do this in some kind of Excel or some kind of spreadsheet or matrix or something to say that this is what happens. But just to give you a little bit of insight without getting into too much depth, our flow would always start with that landing page box. And then from that, we would say, there could be any number of functions, but we would just create a decision box that says, theft. Maybe theft is greater than 10 over whatever time it is. If the condition is no, then we display green. And we show a display by this weird triangle and semicircular symbol. And if it is a yes, then we'll display a red or something like that. And obviously these can get very complex over time and can go on. Our flows for every page might have as many as 200 symbols in it, depending on what's actually necessary. But that's basically how we would create that logic and show that to our development team. We might not actually get all of it in there, but we can at least show them what we're thinking so that they can define it further.
I think it's safe to move into a QA session. If you guys have any questions, we can, day to day at BNotions or wireframing or just anything.
Or how I have to put up with him or vice versa.
Yeah. Oh, yes. In the back, there's a mic coming.
This might be more related to your job position, maybe, but during the entire time when I was watching this, I thought, we had a moment where it was overlapping design versus information architecture. Mm-hmm. So are you overseeing the entire process? Or how much would you say is information architecture is design, or where do you draw the line, and how do you communicate that with your designers so that they know where, you know, like, are they just kind of relying on what you're making and then give it colors and fonts?
Yeah, wow, this is
or,
fantastic.
You know, like, are they involved in your process as well, for example, at certain times?
We're lucky enough that with our team, all of our product analysts, product strategists, product designers, and UI or UX designers all actually sit together. So I can literally turn my back and talk to our visual designers about something. A lot of the people we work with could all be product designers, so we also have that asset as well. But generally, the wireframes are just there to talk about the design intent. Sometimes we get into interaction. Again, that's a contention point between our designers and our product designers. Paul, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of overlap in the sense that, you know, we'll create our set of wireframes as a deliverable to our design team, and they'll start designing, and, you know, they might come back to us and say, you know, what were you thinking? This is a better idea. And, you know, of course, we'll implement that. So, but the responsibility lies on the product designer, like myself or Michael or any of the other product designers, to ensure that the IA has been executed, you know, to spec or to whatever the client is expecting, or, you know, basically what we've tried. As long as the IA is intact, the designers can change the design. So if the most important part of this interface is the map, as long as it comes across in design, then it's okay. Then it's okay to move forward with that.
If you have a client that, this is going back to your fidelity part in your slideshow, if you have a client that just is absolutely dead set on having a like pixel perfect design, what do you do? Like before going into it, like you show them the lo-fi version of what they want or what their site will be like, but they really want to see the final product before you get started or before you pay them, or they pay you.
That's a good question.
Well, I mean, I think we're, in our scenario, we're a bit fortunate. We actually, the way we structure our projects are that, you know, you're going to get a strategy and, you know, ideation phase before anything starts. And then discovery phase. And so out of that, we can spec out the entire project. And as a deliverable of that first part of the phase are all of these types of documents. So, I mean, I think we're in a little bit of a special case.
But I've run my own business before. Obviously wasn't that successful in the end. And I ran into the same problem, you know, especially when you're doing work and then invoicing later and there's no payment up front or anything. Sometimes it just requires the conversation. Just like talk to your client, make them understand why you go through this process and why you're not just in design in the first place, and understand that like this is an evolving process. It is iterative. The purpose of it is to not make those mistakes late in the game where changes are costly.
Yeah, I mean, I would phrase that conversation around, you know, it's going to cost you, the client, a lot more in the long run if we don't do this discovery up front. If I don't get to, you know, explore the correct approach to interfaces and whatnot. Because, I mean, as you know, design takes a lot more effort. And so completing your design and then showing to the client and then them giving you feedback on, you know, oh, this stuff isn't what I expected. To go back and redo that is a lot more effort than it would be to move some buttons around, like some gray boxes around on a screen.
But it can get difficult with high fidelity wires. I mean, obviously, these are all sketches, but if they were actually in a vectorized format or something, they would be pretty indicative of what we actually wanted to display. Like a level 1 wireframe, if we were just looking at something like, say, this, this automatic route idea of finding my parking lot, it could look as simple as just blocking off these areas and saying, you know, this exists here, this exists here, exists here, and maybe there needs to be like a button here or whatever it may be, maybe some title up here, and just really blocky, not really telling much of a story as far as iconography goes or sizes and such. I mean, that's why we have those 5 different levels. We don't often do these as deliverables, but sometimes that's the best way to start instead of just jumping in to try to figure out what the actual solution is first. And again, that would just start with just writing the words of the functions that would exist within those pages.
Hi. So I gotta understand, like, you take as much as you can. Like some clients are kind of high fidelity and some low. You try to get them the best idea. Like it's better to, show them great boxes, like get them idea exactly what they want. But I was thinking, like, as you are fortunate to have many samples that you already done, would you sometimes refer to those samples and say, this is the direction we're moving to? This might ease their, if they always want to see something finished, would you consider doing that? Like say, take as much as you can with the prototyping and then say, this is the direction we're moving to.
Right, so you mean more like capturing our paper or our wireframes and then showing them how that would move into a more high fidelity system and then more into design and just like map it out like this is our process?
But also like refer to examples I've done before and say, look, this is what if you can't understand like the client saying, as much as you showed them like all your wireframes, would you like say maybe to show you like, on a previous site you completed?
Right, this is how we solve that problem in a different scenario.
This is like, then it might please the client.
If they're open to it, yes, but the real issue is just like confidentiality and showing people work that other people have paid for. Perhaps there is documentation about their back-end system that we just can't display to them or something, or they don't want to give up their way that their APIs work or something with other people. It can get quite hairy, I guess, when you get into that kind of stuff. So it's difficult. You need to kind of know where you stand at all times. And
fortunately, there's a lot of good UI kits for wireframing, so it's you can do a drag and drop show to just quickly get those ideas out there. So you don't have to create it from scratch every single time. We use our own proprietary kit that we've just built upon over the years working at BNotions. But there's lots of great stencil kits for OmniGraffle or vector kits for Illustrator out there that are free, and you just grab them and just start mocking up ideas.
It does happen often that I'll just pull up an old project and I know this one module has been made. Maybe I need to change the fonts I'm using because I need to make it like client specific or something, but you can reuse a lot of this work if you do it right.
Okay. Right.
And we have time for one last question over here on the side.
I just wanted to know basically how you guys kind of came to where you are now as UX designers, because it's kind of a really growing field, something I'm interested in, but not quite sure how to get into if I'm not working at a place like BNotions where everything is very compartmentalized in a way, everyone's specialized.
Sure.
How do you get experience in that without going to school or having those kind of credentials that come along with it?
So the question was, how did we get to where we are? Yeah. Do you want to?
I don't know. It's been a long journey. I made my first websites when I was 13 years old, so that was about 17 years ago now. Mostly just, I got cease and desist orders for ripping off other people's code and defacing their websites and stuff, and that's really where I got my start. It was actually all StarCraft-based stuff that I was interested in back in the day. And then, I would teach myself about design. I went to school for back-end development, which I just did not like. I don't know what I was doing or thinking. Luckily landed a design job in the digital advertising industry. Obviously was using some of my front-end skills at the same time. Kind of just worked my way up until I became an art director, kind of understood the full project life cycle, where things get handed off, how things can happen concurrently. And then luckily after I became an art director at a small boutique design studio, I got the opportunity to go work as an interaction designer at Blast Radius for about 2 years. And that's when I really found my love for mobile. And because of my old company, I had a history with the guys at BNotions, so I used to outsource some work to them, and it just kind of fell into my lap. So I was very fortunate that way. But my advice would be, if you don't have that set path, but you believe you have the skill set, just make apps for fun. Over the Christmas break, I was designing a game that's never going to be built just for the sake of just getting it out, because it was something I was interested in, just trying to figure out how those mechanisms and interactions would work. Everybody here probably has had an app idea at some point, maybe mobile or desktop or whatever it may be. Just document it. Just try to see if you can get it out in a way that you can express it to somebody else with more than just words. And if you can portray those thoughts to anybody, well, then you are a UX designer. You're already doing it.
Yeah, I just want to touch upon that. Like in my career, it's always been in like small design teams in a part of a larger company. So it hasn't been the agency route at all. But being part of those teams, it's you have to go and sell design to non-designers or non-technical people, and so you get into explaining why you're doing what you're doing. So this is why we place buttons here, and this is why I'm recommending, we use these colors, and whatever it may be. But over the years, you kind of get critical of other designs that you see, and you get critical of your own work, and so you have this lens where you're always assessing the way that people use things, because how can you optimize on that? So again, to reiterate what Michael was saying, is conveying your ideas really helps in that sense, where you really have to think about why you're doing what you're doing in order for other people to understand it and buy into your ideas.
And if you are interested in learning how to pick apart something that exists and make it better, just do some research, like Google heuristic analysis, see some examples of what people have done out there. I mean, it's really, a lot of it's just very, I would say, circumstantial, and it's very opinionated, but over time you kind of get to see, or if you understand design patterns or have any experience there, you can kind of see where things could be done better, where they've done wrong, how wrong they've been done, why they're wrong. And the more of that knowledge you get, and the more that you keep just putting your own ideas down and trying to actually make something that conveys that thought or message, more likely you are to just keep heading in that direction, I guess.
And just always remember that you're not designing for yourself. It's always for someone else to use. And so, what is that? Who is that person? What is that lens? What is their circumstance? And always approaching the design from that point really helps in understanding people. Like, what are people's needs, and how do they use technology? Those are the types of questions that UX designers face every day.
Just one more thing. How much of your focus is actually on staying up to date with actual kind of the programming, either front end or back end? Or are you guys just more in a kind of theoretical and visual space?
Yes, the question was how often do we, how do we stay up to date with programming? And
are you learning about front and Yeoman and all these other kind of more process workflow oriented things, or are you guys just staying in?
Well, we don't code.
Well, I haven't for a while.
Yeah, I can code you like an HTML4 or DHTML website using Dreamweaver maybe, but yeah. However, there's a caveat to it. We need to know what the latest technologies are, and we need to know Python. We need to understand how things like that work, so that when we're designing something, we know how to convey it to our dev team. But what's the ceiling? Exactly what can we do? So understanding those restrictions also form our design as well. So
we're also lucky that we work in a very open concept office with a lot of people that are really passionate about the various portions of the company that they take care of or ownership of, and they're very talkative about new technologies. We keep an ongoing Skype chat of everybody in the company. Links are dropped constantly. Somebody finds something new and cool, everybody just gathers around their machines. But yeah, it's definitely difficult to stay current. I've not coded a real website in probably about 3 years now. Obviously, I've done little prototypes to prove that interactions will work and such, but even then, I don't really do that much these days. It's difficult. Especially coming from a background where I was never the greatest developer and never the greatest designer and just more of a jack of all trades. It's difficult. Yeah. Just keep doing it.
For the designers who, you probably have friends who do code, go buy them with coffee or a beer and, try to catch up and understand the very basics of the latest technologies to give yourself those restrictions. And
I want to learn Android this year just to get my Java chops back up. I haven't coded Java probably since 2002 or something, but I know it's there somewhere. I just got to bring it back to the foreground and do it. It's all just about doing it. We're doing it wrong and then doing it right.
I think we are getting pushed off the stage here.
Yeah. Well,
we'll answer any questions.
Or reach out to us on Twitter or whatever. We're always available. If we have some bandwidth, we'll get back to you. We'll always get back to you eventually. But thank you all for coming out. I hope you feel like you learned something.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Who here learned something with that one? Awesome. I think every hand in this room is up for that one. That's absolutely amazing. This is pretty much exactly what I wanted to see with the group. We got wireframes. We got basically walking through, doing a bit of a workshop here. It's really, really good. I want to thank you guys both. You did an amazing job, and I know you guys were a bit nervous ahead of time because you've got another presentation in, what, a couple of weeks, a month? It's a panel in about a week. A panel in about a week with 300 different people. So this is his, like, primer for that. So how did he do? Good. Yeah? Thank you. He did good. Awesome. With that note, guys, what we're going to be doing is we're going to wrap up here. Got to clean up, tidy up, do some networking, please. I still see a ton of sandwiches over there. I really don't want to bring those home. There's juices, water, stuff like that. Grab them. Enjoy, guys. I will see you guys next month. We're planning another thing next month, possibly working with another group. But expect big things this year. And reach out if you have any ideas for other talks that you want to see. Send me an email, matthew@htmltoronto.ca. Thanks a lot, and have a great night. Stay warm.
Cheers, Matthew. Appreciate it.